On this episode of the Actual Fluency Podcast, I'm joined by Niels Iversen, who shares his unique, low-tech approach to learning languages.
Welcome to the Actual Fluency Podcast, the podcast that gives you the tools and inspiration to learn languages faster and more efficiently. And now your host, Chris Broholm.
Hello, and welcome to yet another episode of the Actual Fluency Podcast. This is episode number 18. Can you believe that? 18 episodes in. Today, I'm joined by Niels Iversen. Actually, this was recorded during the Polyglot Gathering in Berlin. And so you'll hear us talk a little bit about what we think about the gathering and experiences from there. But the reason I wanted to talk to Niels, and he will be familiar to many of you if you have frequented the How to Learn Any Language forum, is because he's got a different take on language learning that I think is a refreshing perspective. I don't think there are any kind of true ways to learn language. I think there are tons of different ways to do it. And depending on your personality, they can each work in your favor. But the reason I brought Niels along is that he's kind of advocating a very low-tech approach where you write down word lists, you use dictionaries, you use pen and paper, which is something that I haven't really been doing, and I think I've been a victim of growing up in a computer age. You know, all through my school, it's been with computers, and you know, we're just kind of looking for the easiest way to do things. And certainly flashcard sites like Anki or Memrise or any of these kind of sites definitely provide ease of use, and they do make it easy and in some cases also fun to do this kind of vocabulary training. So what was really interesting to me is talking to people at the conference, somebody like Niels, who's on the show today, talking about how he uses low-tech things to kind of learn vocabulary, and he's got some amazing results. And as he presents the data, it's pretty impressive actually, how much you can learn a vocabulary using a pen and paper. And in my kind of, let's say, quest to find out more about this pen and paper low-tech approach to vocabulary learning, I also stumbled upon Mr. David James, who I'll try and get on the podcast on a later date. I sadly was unable to record an interview during the Polyglot Gathering, but I'm sure he would be interested in coming on and talking more about him and his method, which is the goalless method, and I'm sure some of you have heard about it. I hadn't heard about it, but luckily through somebody called Victor, I was introduced to it, and now I'm actually doing it for Russian. And you might be saying, well, aren't you using Memrise or Anki to learn vocabulary? Yeah, I was, but now I've tried that, and as kind of the guinea pig or the lab rat of language learning, I feel like I should try both things before I kind of evaluate what I find best. So what I'm doing now with the goal list is I'm doing at least 50 words a day, and then just writing it by hand. And if you've ever tried to write Russian in cursive in handwriting, it is quite different and it's quite difficult. So for me, it's also a practice to write by hand, which is something I haven't done much, understand how to read the cursive, and then ultimately to learn the vocabulary. So that's why I'm kind of bringing it back, kind of a little bit low-tech style. But today we're talking with Niels Iversen and his amazing kind of approach to language learning, which is vastly different from some of the more outspoken polyglots like Benny Lewis and Luca and all these famous people that I'm sure you've heard of, who kind of advocate speaking to fluency, whereas Niels is more like, well, I'll learn how to read and then I'll learn how to speak afterwards. But anyway, it was a really interesting interview. It's a little long, so I'm going to cut straight into it. And once again, I have to emphasize that these interviews were recorded in Berlin in a hotel room, so the acoustics are not as good as they could be, but I hope you'll still manage. It's a very nice interview, and Niels is a very patient and well-spoken man, so enjoy the interview, and I'll see you at the next one. So I'm joined by Niels Iversen, if you say like a little bit Danish, but not totally Danish.
Okay, mit navn Niels Iversen, og jeg kommer fra Denmark.
There you go. So Mr. Iversen from Denmark, and he's joining me today because he has kind of a different philosophy on language learning to most people here, like the Benny Lewises and the other outspoken polyglots. So we'll be getting into that, but first, how do you feel about the conference? You were last year in the Polyglot conference in Budapest.
Yes, I was there.
And now you're in Berlin at the Polyglot Gallery.
Yes.
So how are you feeling about the event, the vibe, the people?
The whole event is twice as big.
Right.
That's the first thing. There are many more lectures. There are many more people, and it lasts twice as long. But the most important thing is here they have made more to make people speak in other languages outside the lectures.
Right.
And that was one thing you learn after Budapest, that we have to give people who are polyglots a chance to speak in anything but English.
Of course. Yeah. And they've succeeded in that, you think? With the
I think with the Kufuyo, the owl evening event, then they have made also a lot of games and things like that in the evening. Where in Budapest just last year they hadn't thought about that.
Right.
I don't know whether they'll do anything about it in Novi Sad, but I think they have learned something.
Yeah, many of the people who are doing the Novi Sad are here. You know?
Yes, Simcott is here, Luca is here, and I have seen Marini. Those are the main people from Budapest who have seen that it means a lot to give polyglots a chance to speak in all those languages. Why learn them if you don't use them?
Exactly, and socialize also. Network.
Yes, networking.
I think
so that's a fine thing, and that's even more important than the size of the event.
Right. Do you think that this might be just a day too long?
No, I think that the one thing it could have done, they could have used Saturday.
Right.
Because most people just ran around on Saturday doing everything else instead of being here speaking languages.
Yes. I just feel that
that's the only thing I would have made different here.
Yeah. I just feel that, I wasn't at Budapest, but with that being 2 days, that's a little bit too short for me.
Well, they had only one lecture room, and there was not much space outside that room.
Right.
And they had those 2 days where most people stayed outside the venue. So we came listen to our lectures and try to get a couple of minutes between lectures, and. Well, you learn from your mistakes. I think it was a mistake not to have a few places where people could gather and speak.
And time also, because there was no allocated.
Yes, and it became too English orientated.
Right.
So I think they've made a really good job here, but if they hadn't had Budapest, they wouldn't have made the same kind of event here, maybe.
Of course.
I think the idea here, they've used some experience from the Esperanto the Esperanto shows.
Yeah, the conferences.
Conferences and all the activities they've got here in Berlin.
Right. Yeah, and I like those things like you said the Kufuyo, the tea.
Yes, maybe we should just say it comes from the Esperanto word for an owl.
Yes.
So it means you are sitting a long time with the lights on and candles and lights out. I mean, of course, lights out, candles, and people drinking tea while they talk.
So it's like a night owl room.
It's a night owl room. Yes.
It's very interesting, and I like the alligatori as well.
Yes, alligatori. That's a place where you're not allowed to speak your own language, and you're not allowed to speak the language of the place and English.
Right. Yeah, and I did think that Judith was being nice when she said it's English and your native language. So she said it's okay to speak German if that's a foreign language for you.
But it's not okay that people sit down to speak English just because it's the easiest way to do it.
No.
Then it's better than one person speaks French and the other answers in German or whatever.
If they understand it, yes. Yeah, and I think that's why you put the rules there and you say, have to do it, and then they will do it.
Otherwise, they'll just sit down and speak in English because everybody else will do that.
Yeah, I love it. So that was a bit about the conference, and has there been any talks that you've been to that you were especially excited about?
I would prefer not mentioning single talks because I found so many good things here.
So we can say in general the quality of the talks.
The talks have generally been fine. A couple of people have had trouble with the technique and things like that, but they have sorted it out. And in general, it's a fine event here, well organized.
I agree, and I'm impressed actually because it's the first. I mean, they drew on some experience in previous events, but for the people hosting it, that's their first event.
Yeah, I think it's kudos to those people.
Yeah, exactly. I think we owe a great deal of thank you to Judith and her team.
Yes.
So, moving into kind of your story, I guess, if you could take a minute to kind of go back to the past and introduce when did you first start getting into...
Well, we can start out with, I'm now 60 years old, and that means that I've been going to school in a time without internet and with only one TV channel and things like that. And that means that we had other frameworks for trying out methods. We could just say, okay, you can listen to another program or you can find something on the internet.
Right.
So one of the curious things is I succeeded in learning Italian and Spanish without ever hearing the languages. Right. And the first time I really got into conversations in Italian was when I arrived on my first trip to outside Denmark, apart from Norway, on an interrail tour where I arrived in Milano. Okay. And I had never really had a conversation in Italian, and I hardly knew how it sounded. Yeah. Except I have read about how it should sound, and there were a few films on TV in Denmark, but it was very different from the way people learn it now.
Right. So you knew the kind of the book Italian, and you knew how it should sound based on phonology.
And then I came, and then I had to find out how it really sounded.
Right. Was it anywhere close, or was it very?
Yes, I found that I could use my Italian from day one, and that was funny. And I think that is part of the explanation of my way of learning language. Right. I know it can be done like that.
Exactly. It's proof of concept.
It's a proof of concept, yes.
So what did you do the first time for Italian? Did you go into the library and find books?
I found, I play music and I had words like andante, moderato and things like that. I wondered, what is that for language all about? And then I found a textbook and started reading it and doing the exercises, all the classical things, except I didn't have the teacher.
Right.
And I didn't hear the language. I just read what it said about how to pronounce it. Then I found a book with the same author team for Spanish. Oh, and then I said, well, it was a good idea to read Italian. Maybe I should start Spanish. And I had no reason to speak it. I just wanted, it was a good book. The other one, then I learned Spanish too.
Right.
And about the same time, it was, I started out learning a little bit of Latin.
Right.
Because I was interested in birds and animals, and the Latin names puzzled me.
Right.
So I wanted to learn why those words were like that, and then I got some books about Latin.
And every species has a Latin name.
So I learned to learn languages by myself, alongside having some in school.
Right, yeah, you had Latin in school
Yes, but later.
Okay, so by the...
The first language we have in Denmark is about the third class in our school, which starts when we are 6 or 7 years old.
Right.
So I was around 10 years old when we started English.
Right.
And that was about the same time that my family got a television.
Ah.
Yeah. The first English word I learned was yabba dabba doo.
You saw the cartoons.
Yes, because I saw the cartoons. I was a child, of course.
Yeah.
And a couple of years later, we got the German and then French and some Latin. And then I went to the university, where I found out that mathematics was fun when you do it for yourself, but not when you have to do it.
Right.
And I ended up there studying French. But I sat down in the rooms where they taught Italian and a couple of other languages, and we had courses in one course half a year with 2 hours each week in, for instance, Old French, Old Catalan, and a couple of weird languages like that. And suddenly we heard there was a Romanian teacher coming to our institute.
Wow.
Well, then I sat down with 2 teachers and 2 other students, and we started the course. And it lasted 3 years in Romanian.
Wow.
After 1 year, I was the only one. So I told, we then had a new teacher coming there, and I told that man that from now on we do it on my terms. Because otherwise he wouldn't have one single student.
Right. Yeah, so you were the boss of that.
I was the boss. At that point I could express myself a little, and I told him we are doing this in Romanian. You are welcome to explain things, but it will be in Romanian. And there will be as little literature as possible, because I also want to learn about the country and things. It was under Ceausescu.
All right.
So that was I got actually the best kind of teacher-pupil relation you can have, namely the one where you get exactly what you ask for.
Right. It must have been nice.
That was fine. And then I got my exam, and I got a really good note in grammar, and I got a just as good note for my final report, which was about grammar. And then I discovered I couldn't get a job.
Right.
Then I said, okay, well, I could see French and things like that might not have much future if English was going to take over the world. I could see that already in '82.
Wow, yeah.
And I said, maybe it's better to get into something different. I took an exam, and it's called HD. In Denmark, it's a 4-year normally. We did it in 2 years on a special course.
Right.
And studied some economy. Later, I got on with computering, and I've been living on that since.
Right. So how did you apply the kind of the language buzz when you were doing sort of economics and...
At all, not at all.
Right, so you just kind of...
The only thing that I did was traveling, where I got my Spanish polished a little in South America.
Right.
And Italian, I lost almost all of my Italian. I lost my Romanian totally.
Oh.
And Latin went out the drain within a half year or so.
Right.
So it was a time where I simply didn't care about languages.
Right.
And then I came back when I was going to Romania and Moldova in 2006. And I was looking for materials about, and then I stumbled over that forum, which is howtolearnanylanguage.com,
right,
where I've been writing ever since.
Yeah.
And then I decided there were some big wigs there who know a lot of languages. And then I thought, well, I had a past. It might be fun to get that hobby back.
Right.
And then I started relearning Romanian. I added Portuguese, which I hadn't learned until then. And, well, I found out how to teach myself languages. Then I added things that I hadn't learned before. And right now I'm trying to reach as many languages as I can put into my scheme. But there are problems, of course. It takes time.
So you have your Romanian back on a little bit?
Well, that's I have a criterion. I consider myself capable to speak a language if I can go to a country, stay there, say a week, without speaking anything but that language,
right,
and not something just about buying a bread or something like that, but the conversations I would have had in German or English, that kind of conversations.
Right.
And I've done that with Romanian and other languages.
Right.
So I think it's there, but in between my travels, I don't use it.
Right.
And then it becomes rusty. There's no way to deny that.
Right.
And I read it up, and if I go to Romania once again, I just have to read a couple of books and write some essays and a couple of things like that.
It's in there some way.
It's in there, and I can get it back fast. Right. But it is not something I need at home.
Right. No, of course not.
So,
but it is an interesting language.
Well, it's very interesting, but it's just part of a big family. And I want to know the family in its entirety.
Right.
And Romanian is a part of that. So it is not because I'm in love with one language or one culture. It's part of a total picture of all of the language in Europe in principle. Right. And now I'm thinking about the rest of the world. But I start here.
Yeah, sure. But you were fascinated about maybe not so much the speaking part, it's probably more how it looked. the internal grammar, the words.
Yes, well, for most people, they want to communicate with other people, and I know at home I'm not going to communicate.
In Romanian.
In Romanian, not even in things like Italian or Spanish. I may meet one Italian tourist who needs directions once a year.
Right.
Why should I care about speaking when that's my level? I keep it alive by thinking those languages, and then I come to a country where I need it, Italy or Spain or Romania, and I know I can get it running there without much fuss.
Right.
And in between, like this conference here, I think it is worth mentioning, but I just counted how many languages I've used here.
Yeah.
And I had Portuguese, Spanish, Catalan, Italian, Romanian, one sentence in Greek, French, English, Dutch, and again a sentence or two in Afrikaans, but not more.
Danish?
Of course, come to that. German, and I have not used my low German yet, but then I've Danish, of course, but I've spoken a lot of Swedish.
Oh, yeah.
I was surprised by how much Swedish I needed here.
Yeah, and not actually from the Swedish people.
Not only people who learned Swedish.
Yeah, I've talked to, I think he was from... was it England or something? And he was speaking to me in Swedish. That was very interesting.
Because we try to avoid English if we have another means of communication. And there are people here who are learning, for instance, Danish and Norwegian. And then I don't want to speak Norwegian because I'm not quite a few of those dialects.
Right, yeah.
But then I speak in Swedish and they understand it.
Yeah.
And I can speak in Danish and then they don't understand it.
Yeah. Yeah, you need experience.
Not only that, but Danish is harder to understand.
It is.
And those people
Swedish is the hard one.
Swedish is easier for foreigners.
Right.
And we have to realize that. Even I'm a Danish, I'm a patriot Danish person, but it is easier to understand Swedish, and then I use this language, even if it's just one of my latest additions, funnily.
Right.
Because in Denmark we can see Swedish television and also Norwegian, but it has always been a passive language.
Right.
But then I decided that it was idiotic to have a language which is so close to being active. And then I just learned it as I learned any other language.
You found some books and you started...
Yes, simply. And I wrote out texts and found all the unknown words and started the dictionary, everything I normally do.
Exactly. Well, I think that's really good, actually, because I think some people in Denmark or Norway might be tempted to say, well, it's so similar, I'll do differently than if I learned it differently.
Yes, they just...
but they should probably use the same method.
They just try to put on a Swedish accent and say two or three words they know are Swedish, and the result is ridiculous.
Swanglish.
It's simply an offense to speak like that.
Right, and I don't pretend to speak it. I just say I understand Swedish, and I can say prata, and that's about it.
But now I'm fully aware that I speak Swedish without the perfect intonation, because that's the hard part of Swedish.
Yeah, of course.
But as long as the Swedes understand me, and understand me better than when I speak Danish, then I have a good reason to use it.
Of course, yeah. And there are a lot of people speaking Swedish.
Yes, and that's a surprise.
Yeah, not so many Danish, but I have
a couple of years. And I've also used Danish, as I said, because there are some people here who study Danish, and then it's giving them some training.
Yeah, that's what I did.
And that's fine. We have a room here called Alligatoreo, where I am not allowed to speak Danish.
Yeah.
But I'm allowed to speak it all over the place except there.
Right. Yeah, me too. So let's get into you mentioned your method, and we've touched on it a little bit, but maybe let's give the 5 minute a little bit deeper explanation of, because you learning the book way, the non kind of speaking way, but what does that actually mean for your process?
First, I look at which resources I have for language, and if I don't have enough resources, I don't do it.
Right.
And the language which I've excluded, I'm not going to learn Chinese because I don't like the writing system.
Right.
Simply. And the Arab, the same thing, because they don't write the vowels. Then you need a teacher to teach you the language by oral methods.
Right.
Because you cannot read the words without knowing the vowels, which I don't write.
Right.
So there are some languages which I have to exclude for that reason, and the world is full of languages. It's not a problem.
Sure.
There are other languages in this world. So I first find out good dictionaries, good grammars, and internet sites. Something on YouTube maybe. And then the next point is I need to hear the language, because I have to read it.
Yes.
And I have to read it maybe not with an inner voice that is completely correct, but it has to be somewhat correct.
Right.
And that means that I try to sit down and listen to single words to get the sound of the each letter, can we say. It's not the correct description of that, but to know how to pronounce the language in my own head.
Right.
And at that point, I don't want any teacher to teach me anything.
Right. That's your own faith.
That's my head, and they're not going to mingle with that.
Yeah.
And next point. Then I take normally a textbook or something with very simple text.
Right.
And I simply copy them. And I have a piece of paper with a right margin is reserved for new words.
Okay.
All the new words will then go into a word list, and I can explain a little about that in detail later. Yeah. But I go through a lot of text, and in the beginning I may even add a translation to keep things together in my own head.
Right.
Later I just write it down, and even later I just skip the copying part and take good expressions and things like that.
Right.
But I do keep my list of new words. Okay, they go into word lists.
Okay.
And there I have a principle of you should not learn one language, one word with its translation.
Right.
There's a simple thing that dictates that. If you keep repeating the same thing in your head, you need a lot of repetitions to make it stick.
Yeah.
If you can drag it back from just bordering on oblivion, then you learn a lot more. If you get it back from memory, it's like getting the word repeated from scratch, and you can do that many times if you look at something else in between.
Yeah.
And then I found the simplest way to stop me from thinking in one word is thinking about some other words.
Right. So
I said, okay, let's learn words in groups of 5 to 7. And 7, that's because about the amount of information you can keep in your head at one time.
Right.
And then I write on a list with 5 words, look at them and make sure I can translate them into Danish or English or something. And then I write the translations of those 5.
Right.
Then I look at that, and when I decide, I can reconstruct the first column without seeing it.
Oh, wow.
Then I cover the first column and write a third column with the original words.
The 5 words.
Yes, because then I get it both ways.
Of course.
And during that process, I can of course use all the normal mnemotechnic tricks like associations to weird ideas, or pictures, or whatever, and other translations. For instance, if I don't think the Danish translation is clear, then I may use an English translation.
Right.
But then I do that, and with my tiny handwriting, I can do a column with 30 words, and I do maybe 3 columns in a day or in one sitting, and that means I can really confidently say I have learned 100 words in an hour or 2 hours.
Right.
And I can prove it afterwards, because then there is a repetition round. Number 1, that comes maybe a day later, where there are different methods, but I check that I still remember the words.
Right.
And if I don't, I can do something about it then. And I have made some statistics because I'm trying to learn a little bit of Serbian now.
Yeah.
And then it occurred to me that now at this point of time I have a good way to check whether my method functions. I'm in the middle of the Azbuka, as the Serbian alphabet is called, the Cyrillic one. Not the one with Latin letters, but the other. And I have done things before this project, but I take a dictionary
Yeah.
A dictionary with around 12,000 Serbian words. Use about half of those in my word list.
Right.
And if I then do my word list and go back one day later after I've done my repetition and things like that, see how many words do I know from the that dictionary, from the part of the alphabet I've been through, and from the part I've not been through. Then it shows up with extremely good results, because I can see that I know about 2/3 of the words in the dictionary in the part I've worked with,
right,
which is more than I have had on my word list.
Yeah, that's
but I've seen them while I've made it.
Yeah.
And from the other part, about 1/3. That means a boost of 30% by just doing a word list.
Right.
And then, of course, I had to check, will it stick? Because people say, oh, it doesn't stick when you make word lists. I can prove that.
Yes.
Because here at the event, now I've not done a word list for some days. It's about 2 weeks since I made the first part of the alphabet, and I've just been back to it. And I can see that right now I know about 80% of the words on my word list. Yes. I've lost about 20% in 2 weeks.
That's okay.
And I would have done that with any other method.
Of course.
Except then with this method, I know what I've lost, and I can get back and get it.
Of course, yeah.
So people who try to tell me they doesn't function, and
you have the stats.
I have the stats. I have the stats.
People, I know people are scared of losing, or not remembering, but in a sense, when you're saying, if you learn 10,000 words,
yeah.
If you only remember 8,000 by the end of it, that's still 8,000 more.
It's 8,000 words, and there we have to discuss how many words you need, and we can do it very briefly.
Yeah.
If you take about the first 1,000 words, well, let's say head words, dictionary entries,
right.
To be a little specific.
Yeah, otherwise there'll be a lot of words.
Yeah. But head words as in a dictionary.
Right.
Then the first 1,000 or so will cover maybe 90%.
Right, exactly.
But all the interesting content is in the last 10%.
Sure, that's what makes you an expert,
yes.
Or a high-level speaker.
Yes, and it's also, if you read a book about gardening and you don't know what a potato is, then it's not very fun.
That's a big problem.
But then there's a problem. After those words, there's not really a zone where you can see you repeat the words again and again and again. Right. The next words are very much dispersed in the way that if you take two samples, I made a check on the things I've written on that forum.
Yeah.
Two samples with 37, I think, words, 1,000 words. 37,000 words in each sample.
Yeah.
Which, after that, I thought that must be enough. And I found very little overlap.
Right.
Which means that you cannot say you just learn 1,000 words more,
right,
and then you're twice as good. Right. No, after the first 1,000 words, the next target is 10 or 20,000 words.
Yes.
And there's no point in saying you can do with 2,000 words.
Right.
You can say you can survive on 1,000 words. Right. But after that, it's a sky, and it's 10 or 20,000 words, unless you are willing to just buying bread in the supermarkets and shit.
Sure. I mean, and I'm sure a lot of people will be very happy with the 1,000 words, starting out as a just...
Yes, when you started out, but after that, you must realize you need to add a lot of words. And if you just take an ordinary novel or something like that, even a newspaper, if you don't know at least 10,000 words, you will have to look up several words from each sentence.
Right, of course. Yeah.
Or you don't understand it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you would probably, if you had a few thousand words, you'd probably understand the meaning, but you wouldn't maybe understand.
No, because you won't see those couple of 1,000 words you added.
Right.
You'll see some other 1,000 words. And that's the point. You have to cover a really vast area of words in order to be lucky to find those you have learned.
Right.
So you can just as well see the realities. You need the first 1,000 words, and you have to learn those. There's no way out from that. You need to learn those.
Basic.
But after that, then you just have to learn as many words as possible. And that's why I try to do my formal word list studies. And the other methods are Anki, there is a Go list, but something.
Right, exactly. So what you're saying is that get good at vocabulary training.
That's actually, if after hearing the sound of the language, that's the next most important thing.
Right.
Let's get a really big vocabulary.
Yeah.
And then grammar. Okay. There are maybe, say, 10 ways to construct a sentence. There are maybe 10 ways to construct a sentence inside another. And you have, in even the worst language we can speak about, let's say something like Russian or Latin or something like that, there are a couple of hundred forms you have to learn.
Yeah.
And compare that to the number of words you need.
Yes.
And then you see that grammar is something you have to be good at, but there is not really much learning material in it.
Right.
The amount of things you need to learn is negligible compared to the amount of things you learn as words.
Of course, yes.
So
you have the the essential grammar books.
Yes.
But they're not that. I mean, they're usually quite small.
Yes, and I made a lecture here at the conference here where I told you you should use the Pareto principle. Use 20% of the time and get 80%,
right?
And then do something else.
Yeah, and in any single language, if you don't know a very specific, like in German,
who cares? Who cares?
They understand you anyway.
Yes, one of the things I mentioned is that if you really want to learn grammar and you find it totally intolerable,
right?
Then choose some area. It could be one single form, the genitive, say like that, and start a collection. And try to find out a system in it.
Right.
And then you get desperate. Because that's a big trouble to find a system, and then you get back to your grammar because you get it for free. And now you're happy. Now you have a reason to read your grammar.
Yeah.
You didn't have that while you're only reading your grammar.
Right.
But when you come back from that mess you got from making your own collection,
right,
then you'll discover how nice it is that somebody has given you all the correct answers.
Yes. I like the recommendation of taking a text in the language you're learning and then say, I want to find all the grammar or the genitive, all the genitive forms. I want to find all the accusative. Go through the text, because then you're applying what most people see as boring.
Yes, and there's one thing more. You see everything that is common.
Right.
And you skip all things that are not common. So you get a feeling for what you really need and what you can skip.
Yeah. But what do you think about people's, obviously your talk was about grammar, how to survive it was the title.
Yes, that's my title. And I could also have said how to cheat your way out of the dastard grammar if you don't like it.
But I find it interesting that you're very kind of passionate about the structure, and you work out of books and you write it down, so that's kind of a very...
Yes, I have a past at the university, and I use some of the methods I have used while I was studying. You can say I'm halfway polyglot and halfway linguist. In the sense, we normally use this in Europe and not the sense they use in the USA.
Right.
But I don't think doing this study is relevant for language learning.
No.
It's something I do because I have halfway linguistic mind.
Interest in the construction.
That's the interest in the construction. I think people who are going to learn the language should be more interested in getting details.
Right.
And examples.
And 80-20, get as much out of as little time.
Yes.
Right.
Try to find the low-hanging fruits, as I say, and pick those. It will be totally idiotic to learn 100 verbs that have a strange feature, and then lose 100 ordinary expressions you could use.
Exactly. So look at the
low-hanging fruits that I call it.
If there are a few exceptions, well, learn the exceptions. Yes. Because then you know that everything else falls on it. I think that's a beautiful.
Nobody have ever told me that in school or at the university.
Right.
I don't say they have taught me badly.
No.
But they have not really had the courage to say most of the grammar you see in a grammar book can wait.
Right. Well, it's true, isn't it? I mean, some of the constructions are so rare that you might not see it in...
Well, there's three ways to make forms of a French word like s'asseoir. That's because even the French cannot understand the system. And, well, why should I then?
Yeah, exactly.
You need to know the most common exception, and that's words like to be or something like that.
Exactly.
And as I said, if you count how many forms you need to learn there, it's a few hundred.
Yeah.
And compare that to learning a few hundred words of other kinds.
Right.
Then learn them through examples.
Yeah.
It's not enough to say, we have one feature here. We have, say, infinitives that are in ire, and then there's a long list of those with that infinitive form.
Right.
The important thing is what is different. I just put an e. Well, I can see that.
Yeah.
What is different about this?
Right.
And then I find, okay, there are a few forms where that's really important to know that. And the rest, well, it's just you just combine things.
Exactly. So you wouldn't learn words. You would learn words, but you would attach something to the symbol, kind of the example. So
I would learn a simple rule, a couple of simple rules, and I also have shown something I call my green sheets.
Right.
Green sheet, that's in essence a sheet where I try to mention the things I think are worth learning as rules.
Right.
That's the most regular verb forms and substantive forms, adjective forms, and if you do that, then most language can be summarized on 2 sheets.
Right.
And the rest,
pretty good.
The rest are exceptions, and there you have to look at examples to learn them.
Right. And then
it doesn't help you to know that these 35 verbs are different in some way. Right. At least you could show the points where they're different.
Yeah.
And now I can say a little concrete thing. With Polish, my grammar book says that if you know the first person and the second person in the singular, then you know all you need to know about almost every single verb in Polish, which is reputed as one of the most difficult languages in the world.
Wow.
The problem is your dictionary won't give you the second form.
Right.
It'll give you one form, and that's the infinitive, and then maybe tell you something about the first person, but it doesn't give you the rest.
No.
So what you have to do, you have to be aware every time you see a form of a verb, you just make a mental note.
Right.
That's in this category.
Yes.
You need to know the categories, the things to look for, but learning the concrete words, the concrete verbs in this case, is a waste of time. You cannot learn 100 verbs unless seeing them on paper,
right.
Or maybe hearing them, but in my case, looking at some text where I find them.
Right.
And if you don't find a verb, then it's not important.
Right. Of course. I read a study about writing with the hand compared to the computer.
Yes.
Because obviously, when you were at university,
For me, it's always writing by hand because I'm too old to have integrated the habits of a modern youth.
But maybe that's a good thing because they're saying what they're saying with the study is that you remember more.
Yes,
if you write
but
by
they
hand
have to separate those who have been living with their telephone in their hand all their life may have another learning profile than I have, because I've already learned to write by hand. For them, it may be something that keeps them from doing it.
Yes, that's probably.
So I think we should be very careful about this. What is important is to slow down the process.
Right.
So that you look at things instead of just
think about it.
Don't copy text.
Right.
Write it. If you write it on a keyboard, then write it on a keyboard by all means, but don't copy it.
Right. Think about every word.
Think about the words.
Read them out loud, maybe.
And stop caring about the heroine and her lover and all that stuff. Facebook things. Look at the language. Right. And then you can read it once again to find out what happened in the storyline.
Of course.
But you cannot concentrate on both language and the content.
Right. We could probably talk for days about this subject, but...
now I've said the most important.
Yes, 80-20 again. But before we end here, I promised that we would just talk a little bit about the role of Latin.
Yes.
In both when you want to learn languages, but also learning perhaps Latin itself.
Yes.
I think there are two different concepts.
Yes.
I'm a language learner. I don't know any Latin. I had it in high school, a very brief course. So I know the concept of the cases, but I couldn't say anything.
No.
I know that how the endings kind of change the meanings, and there's this famous sentence where it's like there's two names and then there's a verb, and there's 10 different ways to say this, 10 different meanings. That's not important. But if I'm a language learner and I want to learn languages, is there a benefit big enough in learning Latin for improving my learning going forward?
No, I would say if you have already learned 2 or 3 Romance languages,
right,
then it's the right time to learn Latin.
Okay.
It's idiotic to learn it before.
Okay.
Because, it may be the mother of Italian, for instance, but it's much more efficient to learn Italian, and then you can find out why Italian is like Italian.
Come back to it.
And come back to the Latin. But it's even better if you can do it after having learned Spanish and Romanian and a couple of other languages,
right,
because then you have a reason to learn it.
Right. And see the roots.
You have to see the roots, maybe, if you feel like that. But there's no way, if you're very interested in Roman history, but who wants to learn about the Roman society without knowing the modern society?
Right.
So for most people, it's more relevant to learn Italian or Spanish now,
right,
which can put you into contact with the millions of people,
right,
than to learn something which is spoken fluent by 10 professors and a couple of priesters.
Yeah. And the rest just kind of know it.
But then the next question is, why do we do it? I did it because it was offered.
Yeah.
And the next thing is to learn to study French. I had to have a course in Latin, and I had courses in Latin.
Yeah.
But I also found out that as soon as I stopped using it, then it disappeared.
Right.
Just, I had no reason. The only thing I used it for was to read on grave monuments what they had written there. Yeah. And that was not interesting.
No.
So, when I went back to my language studies, I studied, of course, Latin in the old-fashioned way with grammar translation.
Yeah.
When I went back around 2010 maybe, then I discovered I actually remembered most of my grammar.
Oh.
Because there's one thing those grammar translation people can do. That's put grammar in a consistent and logical way.
Right.
So then you can learn it.
Yeah.
The thing they don't provide is a reason to do it. And they don't provide a way to keep it alive.
Right.
So I decided then that it had to be an active language.
Right.
So I started thinking in Latin and writing in Latin, and I even made a couple of videos in Latin.
So you made it alive.
I made it alive, even if it wasn't a language which I could use with other people. But what's the difference? I don't use my Romanian with other people. So what's the difference?
There's no difference.
It's actually the same situation with Esperanto. Mm-hmm. Because if you have to learn Esperanto and speak it, then you have to find some people. And there's no country.
Right.
There's no country for Latin. Well, even the Vatican speaks Italian.
Yeah, of course.
And there's no country for Esperanto. You have to go to conferences or be member of clubs or something.
Yeah.
So what's the difference?
Yeah, that's.
And if I sit at home, I start using the same methods I use for any other language.
Right.
So I didn't use it. I didn't learn it as a dead language.
Yeah.
I learned it as a modern living language, which even has its own internet newspaper.
Right.
There's something called ephemeris, where they write about modern things, and sometimes they invent words.
Wow.
But that's the kind of Latin I want to know.
That's interesting, yeah. I mean, that would be a good motivator to learn.
That's a good motivator, and also I found a dictionary purely by accident in Manila in the Philippines. Wow. I just bought it, which gives me really good words for things that exist now, like, say, the computer or something like that. Right. The funny thing, they call it computralis, because a computer is a human who computes things.
Right, of course.
So that was, okay, that's just the detail. But I tried to consider it as any other language and learn it as any other language. Yeah. And now I have slacked little off. I'm not sure I could speak it today, but I could learn. I could revitalize it. It is there. Yeah. And this time it's an actual language.
Right.
But then there are a couple of other languages. I could in principle also learn Old Greek.
Right.
But there's a difference. I know the Romance languages. But I had to learn the Greek language before it made sense to learn Old French.
Yeah.
And that means it has been postponed until I'm really good at modern Greek.
Right. And you're working on that sort of...
I'm working on that.
Right.
I'm working on that.
Oh, fantastic.
And then we have a couple of old languages like Old French, Old Occitan, and Old Norse, things like that, where I don't have the resources to make them active. In Latin, there are actually resources. Right. There are people who speak it on the internet that are really fluently in real. And there are courses, there are books, there are texts, and there's a newspaper, as I said. And there are dictionaries in both directions if you choose the right ones. There are much rubbish, because most dictionaries in Latin only cares about the Roman, maybe the medieval period. Right. But I need modern words. I need words for hotel, and do you know there's not really a good word for teacher.
Oh, really? Latin. That surprised me.
Because the wealthy people had a slave to do it.
Right.
Mostly a Greek slave. Right. And then they had schools for gladiators and things like that. But they didn't have a school system. Right. So if I want to write about schools, then I have to search for a good word. And luckily there are people who make a dictionary where they have understood that. Right. But most just turns the direction of the Latin dictionaries where they take old Latin words and find a translation. Right. And they are not useful if you want to make a language active. Right. And I've not found anything for Old French and Old Occitan, Old Norse and things like that, which has that active element.
It's a little bit too dead.
So those will, for me, remain passive.
Right. Well, it's still interesting, I feel like, and there's not many people here who talk of Latin or...
Well, there are a couple of people who know some Latin.
Yeah, I've seen a few.
A few of those,
one of them, and I mean, I think it's just really exciting, and when I was doing it in school, I didn't particularly enjoy it, but I think that's pretty common probably when you're about 14, 15.
But the point is, I actually liked Latin back then, but I found out I didn't get the things I needed after I had left the courses. Right. So now when I see, I had the same teacher for German and for Latin, he used the same methods.
Oh, really?
Actually. Well, the point is, he taught me German, and I could speak German.
Right.
But his focus was different with Latin, and therefore we never got to use Latin fluently.
But maybe that's not the point of those courses.
Well, it's not the point, but it's a way to make them relevant.
Historical tool.
Yeah, well, the idea is, of course, that should be used as historical tools or to read the classics. Right. But who cares about the classics? I do. Yeah. No problem. I read. In my luggage, I've got Livy, the history of the Roman kings, for happy reading in the evenings and things like that. Yeah. But you cannot just limit a language to something which happened 2,000 years ago. You need to use, when you think about things, you need words for your daily life here in this year.
But then, so isn't Esperanto perfect because there's hardly any class? There are no classes. There's very limited literature, but it's all about speaking.
The problem with Esperanto, for instance, if we take that, they speak about Esperanto all the time.
Yeah.
They sometimes translate works from fiction.
I've heard that, yeah.
And I've read, I've read most of Tolkien in Esperanto. Wow. And it's very nice. But when it comes to, for instance, articles about dinosaurs, or let's say the way to construct the musical instruments in the Renaissance, right? Things, astronomy, things that I'm interested in. There's nothing, or it's very, very superficial. Right. So I have not really had the pleasure of learning Esperanto that it needed, and therefore it has become a little rusty because when I don't use a language, I don't think in a language, then I lose it. Yeah. That's very natural process.
It is. And then you get back to it and it comes back.
Well, then I can get back. Now I've got a boost here at this conference with people. There are lots of aspirants this time.
Yeah, definitely.
And I've got back to the point where I so more or less can speak it. But I know if I sat down just a couple of days at home, then I could really boost it.
Right.
But why?
Yeah. It's so right.
They have to find something interesting to write about, and then I'll be interested. Right now, it's just a second-order language which I keep because, well, I've used time to learn it,
right.
And it's an interesting language in itself, but it's not one that has given me as much as, for instance, learning Romanian.
Right.
So,
well, that's incredible, and I just want to say thank you for taking the time to share your side of the coin, because I've told you this a few times already, but I'll just repeat it, that a lot of the people who come to these events, those that are very publicized and all over the kind of the community, they always go by this, speak by day one, and you should do it this and this way. It's really refreshing to hear another way, and like you say, you've proven it. It's not just theory, So not only have you proven it, you're also proving that you need to find a way that works for you, and you don't just take any piece of advice as true fact.
Of course, I know who you're speaking about.
Sure.
And I admire many of those enormously for the things they can do, just walk up and find the people who speak to them in Kazakh or whatever.
Yeah.
But we have to realize not all of us are that gregarious.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Niels, and I'm sure we'll enjoy the
Thank you for listening to the Actual Fluency Podcast. For more information, be sure to check out actualfluency.com. Until next time, enjoy learning and have a great day.